They come from all over the world, the north, the east, the south, and the west. Wherever they come from, young, intrepid comic reviewers want to show off their stuff, review comics they like and dislike, and give the Nazis what for. Take Seafarer, for example. This young man's working hard for the day he does not have to review Marvel now. He trains hard to review good comics. Look at him go. Looking to the past for a brighter future, he knows what he wants to do. He wants to, again, take a look at Marvel's great heroes from the past and stick it to anyone who says anything about a good comics and their creators. He will be starting with Marvel's Sentinels of Liberty, Captain America, Marvel's first Avenger, and Uncle Sam's favorite son. Does he have what it takes to cover such an awesome character? Will he stand tall as he once again covers the great comics of Marvel's past?
You bet I will. Also, I need to figure out what's been making these narrations appear in my house.
Who's here to fight door to door for America? Carries the flag door to door for America. Who's here to say that we can? The Star-Spangled Man with a Plan. I love that song. Shame I can't put it in this video. It's a shame I can't sing too. Anyway, as you can tell, I really like Captain America. He's on the list of my favorite Marvel heroes after Spider-Man, and I'm happy to be starting another Marvel history retrospective with the Sentinel of Liberty, the first Avenger, the man who stood toe-to-toe with the demigod and told him off. Yeah, I should probably stop rambling and discuss the character, right?
Besides, I could spend all day talking about how awesome Cap is. That's not what this video is about. Yet.
Captain America was created by comic legends Joe Simon and the King himself, Jack Kirby, months before the United States of America actually entered World War II. His creation is the stuff of legends. Simon went on record and said that Captain America was a political creation, since he and Kirby were absolutely repulsed and angered by the actions of the Nazi Party. He even stated, basically we were looking for a villain first for the book, and Hitler was the villain. The statement was made quite clear by the cover, which I'll get to in a moment. The publisher of Timely Comics, Martin Goodman, felt the same way as Namor and the android Human Torch were sticking it to the Axis powers at the time in their own books, and gave the two the go-ahead to create a hero who would symbolize American ideals at the time. Simon pitched the idea to Goodman with a quick sketch and initially called the character Super American. But he changed it since there were far too many characters with super in their name.
Superman! Huh. I try to get that cough looked at.
They couldn't call him the Shield either, as there was another character running around with that name. Simon decided on Captain America since there weren't many captains around, and let's face it, the name just rolls off the tongue. Once the plans were laid out, Simon called on his artist friend Jack Kirby to do the penciling, and thus the first Avenger was born, and joined the ranks of Marvel's other Golden Age heroes like the Human Torch, Namor, the Wizard, Miss America, and others. Unlike their books in the previously reviewed Marvel Comics #1, this comic was to be all Cap, and have no other stories but his in the anthology. This was a big deal as no one had done this before, and the King himself was definitely up to the task.
Was there ever any doubt? Jack Kirby was made out of pure awesome.
We're going to be treated to a story where a scrawny, sickly young man becomes a symbol and an icon for not just America, but someone who becomes the ultimate patriotic character who embodies what it truly means to be a hero in any age, past, present, or future.
I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's dig into Captain America Comics #1. Right now. Come on, let's go. Yeah, I'm a little excited. Can you blame me?
Look at this cover. Just look at it. Your eyes are immediately drawn to Captain America punching out Adolf Hitler, And while this doesn't happen in the comics, sadly, it would be enough to tell the public that America isn't going to stand by and watch the world be taken over by a fascist regime. This is powerful imagery right here. And look, he's totally ignoring the Nazis shooting at him as he goes for the big man himself. Captain America, going after the big guns since March of 1941. Our story begins with the narrator explaining how, while many young Americans were signing up to defend our country just in case something happened, there were, and always have been, threats of an invasion from within America itself.
The problem is, we were too late to arm ourselves against the coming of Google.
In any case, sabotage was running wild as poor defenseless buildings were blown up. Army men meet with the president to discuss their options, and President Roosevelt, at least I think that's FDR, says that he has a plan up his sleeve and asks his secretary to bring in Mr. Grover.
Mr. President, Jim Henson hasn't even been born yet.
To my disappointment, Mr. Grover isn't a blue Muppet. I was hoping Super Grover would take out the Nazis. That I want to see. Anyway, Mr. Grover has a plan that may interest the general. A plan that involves going to a secret location hidden in one of America's mysterious curio shops. An old lady running the joint reaches for a gun, and before Granny could open fire, the men say that they're government officials, and the lady says that they're waiting for them, as a formula has been found. Wow, Granny was really a secret agent named X-13 this whole time? Sneaky. Anyway, Grover and his men, who I'm going to call Oscar and the Count, are taken to an observation area where they watch a scientist examine a frail young blonde man named Steve Rogers. The scientist, codenamed Professor Weinstein, assures him that he will become one of America's saviors.
And in the next century, a young man named Chris Evans will play you in a story about your life. It will be a better movie than the ones that preceded it. I can guarantee it.
The doctor then injects the youth with what will be later known as the super soldier serum, and he begins to glow as the man explains what's happening to the lad. Meanwhile, I can only imagine how much pain Steve is in. Weinstein explains that the serum increases his size, stature, and intelligence, making him the Nazi ideal of Aryan perfection. Blue eyes, buff body, and blonde hair.
What better way is there to stick it to your enemies by having your own vision of perfection pummel you over and over again?
Weinstein says that he'll be called Captain America, and before they can shake hands, an assassin emerges from the observation booth. Quickly, the man shoots Weinstein, and even Grover. Oh, that's not cool. The spy stops shooting when Steve approaches him, and pulls him through the window, and proceeds to smack him around. Congrats, dude. You are the first to fall at the hands of the captain. The spy was defeated, and sadly no copies of the serum were made, and the notes were never written down by the late doctor. In hindsight, that's sloppy science. I guess it makes sense if the doctor didn't want copies to fall into the wrong hands. The incident didn't stop Rogers, though. He put on a silly and yet awesome costume, and proceeded to fight for the red, white, and blue, by defeating saboteurs, spies, and any and all threats. In a break from the action, we have Steve being greeted by a young army mascot named James Bucky Barnes.
Hang on a second. Mascots? Why would the army put a kid in danger? Don't tell me they were decoys or something.
Bucky says that he wishes he could meet Captain America someday, and he wishes he could be just like him. Foreshadowing. What was that? The next night, Bucky finds Steve in a tent putting on the costume, and is surprised to learn that Steve was Captain America. What? Didn't the muscles on top of muscles not give you a clue, kid? Steve relents and offers to take the kid on as a decoy. Sidekick. And thus a classic team was formed, as Bucky's dream to work with Cap came true.
This origin is good, but I want to see Cap in action. Let's see what else this anthology has to offer.
Captain America and the Riddle of the Red Skull. Oh, this is gonna be sweet. The Red Skull is Cap's arch nemesis, a man who has constantly been a thorn in his side. Our story begins with someone asking another man for protection, and says that there is no such thing as the Red Skull. Says the guy who has probably seen the Human Torch fly around. Even Bucky's a little suspicious about a real Red Skull. Cap, though, has a feeling something is going to happen. In a major's study, a creepy-looking guy in a Red Skull mask sneaks up on him. The Skull grabs the man and urges him to scare himself to death. In fact, he says to look at death.
I can see it now. It's a dark reality where kids listen to loud music and watch something called reality television.
The murder at the base alerted the cops, and they think he was scared by something otherworldly. That's some prime detective work there, Chief. You couldn't even hear the Red Skull right behind you through the window. Steve takes Bucky to the barracks as a ruse so that they could investigate the murder as Captain America and Bucky. At the last minute, Cap says that he'd better go alone. Since Bucky is dressed up, he decides to go and check things out. Smooth kid. Later, the Red Skull is explaining his diabolical plan to his henchmen. He plans to overthrow the government by stealing from the National Bank? Okay. You're nothing if not creative there, Skull. Unknown to the goons, the conversation was overheard by Bucky, who realizes he has to warn someone fast. However, a thug notices dirt falling off of the roof. Oops. The ledge gives way, and down goes Bucky. The gangster sees him, and Bucky tries his best to fight the guy. Sadly, he is defeated and brought to his boss. The Skull recognizes the lad as Cap's partner, and the goon says that they'd better let him go.
Never! Don't you realize we could use him as bait?
The Skull agrees with me, and before he can enact his plan, there's a knock at the door. Skull asks who's there, and Cap bursts through the door like the Kool-Aid Man.
These jokes write themselves.
Cap and Bucky make short work of the thugs, and the Skull escapes, vowing revenge. Cap relents that it's too late to chase after him. The next day, Private Rogers and the company oversee a new plane taking off, when suddenly it is engulfed in flames. The Human Torch was nowhere to be found. The general sighs at the loss of the plane, while Steve asks about the men who lost their lives. Of course, the general berates him.
Sorry, sir. I won't care about troops under my command ever again. Sir!
Back at the tent, Cap tells Bucky he will handle the sabotage, while the general gets a mysterious package. It's probably a box full of coal, or at the very least, angry letters from the relatives of the men who died. Oh, it's the next best thing. A Red Skull. I'd have preferred a horse head myself. With the skull is a note saying that the general will die soon, and as he casually dismisses it, who should appear but the Red Skull himself. Of course the Skull kills him and checks his name off of a list. This guy is so cartoony compared to later versions of the Red Skull. I love it.
Seriously, I expect him to cackle evilly and twirl a mustache at this point.
Before the Skull could add Mickey Mouse to the list or something, General Manner's wife comes at him with a gun. She rushes to his side, and the Skull still stands there. What a goof. Not as much as her, since she dropped the gun. She says he will pay, and the Skull replies, it is America who will pay, and he will be the master of all. Red Skull shoves the lady aside, and hears footsteps. Enter our hero with a nice tackle. There are members of the New England Patriots who can learn a lot from you, let me tell you. Cap punches the Red Skull through 2 comic panels, and our baddie here grabs a wooden chair. Looks like we got an Extreme Rules wrestling match here as the Skull knocks our hero out. After checking his name off the silly list, he urges the captain to look into his eyes.
Dude, he's out cold.
At least Bucky is trying to figure out what game this guy is playing. Our plucky young sidekick swings on a rope and hits the Skull in the back. Robin, eat your heart out. Angry, the Skull advances toward the kid as he urges Cap to wake up. Cap regains consciousness and socks the Skull. Another punch and the mask shatters like it was glass? What? Bucky was amazed by the false face, and Cap realizes the man behind it was none other than Mr. Maxton.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just had our first Scooby-Doo reveal.
Bucky finds a needle and says that it doesn't make sense for the Skull to have it. Cap says it makes perfect sense since he'd used the needle to kill people once he scared them out of their minds and make it look like they were scared to death by his eyes. Instead of lamenting about being foiled by meddlesome kids, Maxson struggles with Cap and ends up rolling onto the syringe, killing himself. Unflinching, the captain phones the FBI and informs them of the general's murder and the death of Maxson. Cap and Bucky head off into the night, and the feds arrive later at the scene. They investigate and wonder why such a prominent Air Force guy was a spy. One of the feds finds an answer that would explain the terrorist activities. A letter from Hitler himself. And so ends the criminal career of George Maxson, the first of many who would call themselves the Red Skull. And as it happens, this is where our Golden Age adventure ends.
Oh, Captain, my Captain, your comic rocks. Let's take a closer look at your comic and your legacy.
What can I say about this comic? It's Captain America. Again, the cover has Cap punching Hitler in the jaw, and he's ignoring the other Nazis around him. He just went for the head honcho and just doesn't even care. That kind of symbolism would have been enough to rally the downtrodden American people to do something about a threat, which would eventually threaten our shores. From there we get amazing art from Jack Kirby, who would later go on to collaborate with Stan Lee to bring other creations to life. Yeah, there were a few plot holes and such, and again you have to wonder about the wisdom of having a 10-year-old as a mascot. The Red Skull bit admittedly threw me for a loop since we didn't get the real Red Skull until a few issues later. The other tales in the anthology are equally good too. I just picked one that was a better fit since it had a connection to Cap's arch nemesis. This is still a good comic that holds up even today. The origin, of course, is a classic, and has been tweaked and deepened over the years by various writers, including Stan himself. Despite any changes made, it's still basically a story of a young man who is sickly, wanting to join the army, is denied because of health issues, and later becomes a symbol for Americans everywhere, regardless of who they were and where they came from. This origin has never been changed to the point of it being unrecognizable, and it shows just how much staying power a character like Captain America has. The comic sold close to 1 million copies and hit a chord with Americans still recovering from the Great Depression, and who were also hearing about the insanity in Europe and Asia. In fact, this book even caught the ire of American Nazi groups that were around at the time, and they actually threatened the lives of Simon and Kirby since they wrote the story, and both men were Jewish. In response to the threats, then Mayor of New York, Fiorella LaGuardia, offered to protect the two from any and all kinds of harm. Cap, in the meantime, became Timely's most popular character in a time when America needed heroes. I can see why the comic did so well. The art here is crisp and clean, which again could be attributed to Kirby's art style. The man, the king, knew how to draw spectacularly, and he did alright for himself in the decades since this book was published. The stories weren't trite at all either, as Joe Simon told the stories he wanted to tell based on his own experiences and what was going on in the world. In a universe where the majority of heroes are like you and me, people with faults and foibles, Captain America is symbolism incarnate. And yes, even he has his faults. It's not just because Rogers wears the American flag. It's more that he represents a time in history where the line between good guys and bad guys were as clear as day. We knew who the bad guys were back then. And now, he represents the ideal of an America that doesn't give up. Yes, the country has our flaws, and our captain would be the first to admit it. He's still there to show that there is hope, as the ideal is greater than whoever wears the uniform. The uniform, and whoever wears it, symbolizes hope for America, beginning with a man who was created by two Jewish guys who lived through one of the darkest times in our planet's history. Steve Rogers is appealing because he's a man out of time, since he was revived in the present day. And while people may think he's out of touch, he still holds on to the ideal that America could be better, and do better. He inspires hope, and stands for something. That is what makes him a hero, and a great character in my eyes. Here is a man who started life as a downtrodden, sickly youth who saw the worst in humanity become a symbol, and fought not because it was the right thing to do. It's more that he doesn't want to see the darkness fall on anyone ever again. He saw the horrors of war, and he wants to preserve the peace, and will stand up to anyone in order to do so. That is why Captain America is one of the most iconic characters in the Marvel Universe. He is the man willing to do what it takes to preserve peace, despite being born from war. Writers have taken that philosophy with the good captain since his return in the 1960s, and that is why he has endured for so many years, and will continue to do so for years to come.
Captain America is one of Marvel's greatest characters, and I recommend checking out any story you can find starring him. Until next time, I'm Seafarer, thanks for watching Comics Showcase, and I'll see you in the funny pages. Man, I hope nothing bad ever happened to that Bucky kid. Whoa. Looking good there, Bucky. Nice killer assassin. Wow. That cyborg look is really paying off.